You may not like what he's saying, but I think he's one of those ones right now. All right, so let's take a look. You guys give me your thoughts, and hopefully I'll let it play for as long as I can before interrupting. It would help to turn the volume on.
This conference, of course, to discuss security, and normally we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck.
Now, I have to stop it very quickly because that was something that a lot of people were getting upset with Trump, JD, discussing when it came to American politics, where this threat from within. And a lot of people got upset about it. And I think we had a conversation last week, and I know we touched on it yesterday, where we were talking about what is politics and what is government. I think we're all to the point now where it's very easy, especially I know there's a lot of people on the liberal Democrat side that are calling out Elon Musk, saying that there's a oligarchy, whether it's Bernie Sanders, whether it's Jasmine Crockett. They're acting as if rich and powerful people haven't been controlling the government for a very long time. Now, I know it's easy to take a stab at Elon because this may be the first time that you have somebody actually front and center and being transparent as far as the impact that they're having on the overall government. But let's be clear, wealthy people, rich people, mostly who we don't even know their names, we'll never know their names. They hide behind names like, oh, it's BlackRock or any other company like that that seems to have their hands in literally everything. They've always run the government. All you have to do is look at how these politicians have $200,000 salaries, but then they leave office and they're multimillionaires. All you have to do is look at how they raise these funds. Look at how much money Kamala Harris was able to raise. Whenever you receive money from somebody, you are controlled by them in some aspect. At any point, you take money from somebody, you are controlled by them in a certain way. So money has always been involved in government. However, when you hear, and not to say however, I should say, but so when you understand that, and then when you hear JD Vance talking about the threat from within, the threat is always going to come from within. The threat is always going to come from within because let's just be honest, even though in a democracy, the people are supposed to control the government's supposed to work for the people, we know that the government, the propaganda from either side, they are great salespeople. They control the algorithm. We saw what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's administration did to pressure Mark Zuckerberg to not put out certain things, whether it was in 2020 when people were getting banned from social media for saying that they believe that the COVID came from a lab leak. And now it seems like all of these government agencies are now accepting that. So those are the very things that were banned. You were banned. They were removing that information if you were saying those things on certain platforms. But now it's almost common knowledge. So when we have this, so I just say that to demonstrate how powerful a lot of these government agencies can be. And when I say a lot of the government agencies, I'm talking about the people that are funding them. So the threat is always going to come from within, which is why I never really understood why when JD Vance would say that months ago, people would lose their, they would just lose it and act as if he's some type of traitor, as if they don't understand. And when people, they know how the government works. So when they try to finesse us into thinking like, oh, they're traitors, they're saying that the threat is from within the country, where else would a threat come from? We're not talking about a war with another country. We're talking about the issues, the different ideologies between Democrats, Republicans, conservative, and liberals. So both sides probably are going to think that the threat comes from within. But let's keep going. Let's just keep going. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there.
Struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values, we must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action.
So obviously this combo is the one that we have in America when it comes down to free speech, what should be allowed, what shouldn't be allowed. And I think that it's very hard to live in America and not, at least for me, I should say, let me just speak from my perspective, and not see that the government is just trying to censor certain language, not because whether or not they think free speech is appropriate or should be. I mean, when you look at it, the Democratic Party used to be the party of the free speech. It almost reminds me of like DEI conversations where you have certain people that everybody wants DEI, right? Everybody wants DEI until the person that they're having a conversation with disagrees with them and doesn't share the same viewpoint as them. So that's the same thing how I look at it when it comes to free speech. Like, we want free speech, but until that person says something that disagrees with my ideologies. We want free speech until it conflicts what I'm trying to push in my agenda. So therefore, the political party will try to silence certain things. We see it all the time. We see it all the time. They'll try to label it in different ways as hate speech. No, maybe that person just doesn't agree with how you view the world and agree with a particular lifestyle that you're trying to push to the culture of America. But clearly it's happened in other places as well. I just see free speech as an interesting thing, because free speech is only worth something when when something is being said that you disagree with or that may offend you, right? Other than that, there would be no need to talk about free speech. If people are saying things that you agree with, then obviously it's all good, right? But until somebody says something that you don't agree with, that challenges your ideologies, that challenges maybe your individual lifestyle, that's when it becomes a problem.
I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder.
What's up, Vance?
And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility.
So I just wanted to give y'all a feel of the speech that he's making. I don't know if you guys are JD Vance fans or not, but I think it's an interesting speech. If you can, I believe the full speech is about 19 minutes. I think it's worth looking at. I just think it's one of those things where we're just starting to see that shift. And I think we already saw the shift obviously happening in America, but now we're starting to see that shift from America impacting the rest of the world. And I can't front when I hear JD Vance express these things. Not that I think that America should be the decision maker in how other countries are running. But I'm glad that JD Vance is standing on a lot of the principles, values that not that he believes in, obviously he believes in them, but that America has shown that they've embraced, you know, regardless of all the people saying how much they hate Trump. I think that it's very clear that when you sit down and have conversations with people, whether they voted against Trump or for Trump, I think it's very clear that we all believe that a lot of the things that have been pushed with this woke ideology, with a lot of the liberals have been pushing, is insane. So I'm glad to see some of these things changing, because even though a lot of people will say, well, this doesn't impact me, this doesn't impact me, from a cultural standpoint, what doesn't impact us? Aren't we all products of our environment? Aren't we all products of the experiences that we have? So what determines experience more than culture? It happens across the board. What determines experience more than culture? Why does every black kid want to play basketball and football? Why do Asian kids seem to do better in school? Why? These things are based on the culture, the overall culture and how it impacts, and then your individual culture, maybe within your household and within your demographic group. So let's move on. I want y'all to see this video that kind of I wouldn't say that it aligns with the last video that you saw, but it kind of aligns with this whole shifting of the guards or shifting of this mindset, especially when it's come to just accepting everything that the government has put before us, accepting everything that Anthony Fauci says, like in 2020, this acceptance that we've done of holding these political figures or doctors or health experts, quote unquote, in high regards. I'm glad that these things are being challenged, and I'm glad that they're being exposed. And this is why I'm so happy with RFK Jr. and the Maha movement. But